Sarah Chen stared at her screen for the third time that morning. The communications console showed nothing but static where New Haven Colony should be. She refreshed the connection. Still nothing. Her coffee sat cold beside her keyboard as worry twisted in her stomach. "Something's wrong," she said to her supervisor. "New Haven went dark 6 hours ago." Commander Park walked over to her station at Earth's Central Communications Hub. His face was calm, but Sarah saw the concern in his eyes. He had been doing this job for 20 years. "Colonies didn't just go silent. Send a probe," Park ordered, "and wake up the response team." The probe took 4 hours to reach New Haven. When its cameras turned on, Sarah felt her blood go cold. Where a thriving colony of 250,000 people had been, there was only melted glass and twisted metal. The buildings had been turned to slag. The defensive satellites were gone. Everything was destroyed. "Get me the United Earth government," Park said quietly. "Now." Within 12 hours, every major leader on Earth knew the truth. New Haven Colony had been erased. Not conquered. Not invaded. Simply destroyed from orbit. With such force that the very ground had melted. There were no survivors. Not even bodies remained to bury. Fleet Admiral Marcus Webb stood in the emergency session of the United Earth government. He was a tall man with gray hair and hard eyes. He had fought in the border wars. He had seen terrible things. But this made his hands shake with rage. "Who did this?" demanded President Martinez. The chamber was packed with representatives from every nation, every colony, every station humanity called home. "We're still analyzing the evidence," Webb said. His voice was steady despite the anger burning inside him. "But preliminary data suggests the Korthax dominion. Energy signatures match their weapons. The attack pattern matches their fleet tactics." A murmur ran through the chamber. The Korthax were a territorial species. Humanity had met them twice before, both times brief and formal. They controlled 12 systems and considered themselves a major power in this region of space. "Why would they attack us?" asked Ambassador Okonkwo. "We've had almost no contact with them." Webb pulled up a holographic display. It showed New Haven's location in space and the Korthax territory nearby. New Haven was expanding, building new stations. The Korthax probably saw it as a threat. They wanted to send a message, Martinez repeated. Her voice was hollow. 250,000 people dead. To send a message, Webb nodded slowly. They wanted to establish dominance. To show us they control this region. They expected us to back down. To negotiate. To accept their terms and stay small. "And what do you recommend, Admiral?" Martinez asked. Webb looked around the chamber. He saw grief. He saw fear. He saw anger that matched his own. "I recommend we send them a message of our own." The vote was nearly unanimous. Only 3 representatives voted against military action. The rest wanted justice. They wanted the galaxy to know that humanity would not accept the murder of its people. They wanted the Korthax to understand that actions had consequences. "Activate the doctrine of remembrance," Martinez declared. The doctrine of remembrance was old. It had been written after the colony's ship disaster of 2156, when a transport carrying 15,000 settlers was destroyed by pirates. Earth's response had been swift and total. Every pirate haven within 5 systems had been wiped out. The message was clear: harm human civilians, and humanity's military would find you. Now, almost a century later, the doctrine would be invoked again. Webb returned to Fleet Command and began issuing orders. Shipyards across the Sol system received emergency activation codes. Mars orbital construction began working triple shifts. The Luna facilities started producing missiles. The asteroid mining operations switched to military production. Earth's entire industrial might turned toward one purpose: war. "How many ships?" asked his second-in-command, Captain Rivera. Webb looked at the tactical displays. The Korthax had maybe 200 warships, according to intelligence. A formidable force by galactic standards. Most species maintained small defensive fleets. Wars were rare and usually limited. 1,000, Webb said. Rivera's eyes went wide. "Sir?" "They killed 250,000 of our people," Webb said quietly. "We're going to show them what happens when you attack humanity. We're going to show the entire galaxy. 1,000 warplanes, carriers, destroyers, frigates, strike craft. Everything we have and everything we can build in the next month." "The galaxy will think we're insane," Rivera said. "Good," Webb replied. "Let them think that. Let them see what humans do when you murder our families. We don't conquer. We don't occupy, but we do not forgive those who glass our worlds. The orders went out, reserves were activated, crews were assembled, weapons were loaded, ships that had been in dock for repairs were rushed to completion. New vessels still under construction were fast-tracked. Earth's fleets, which had been scattered across multiple systems, began converging on Sol. Meanwhile, intelligence officers worked around the clock. They confirmed the Korthak's responsibility. They found communications showing Korthak's leadership had ordered the attack deliberately. It was meant to be a demonstration, a show of power. The Korthaks expected humanity to protest, maybe send a diplomatic mission. They thought humans would be afraid. They were wrong. In the streets of Earth cities, people gathered at memorials. Holographic displays showed the names of everyone who had died at New Haven. 250,000 names scrolled endlessly. People cried. They left flowers. They demanded justice. My daughter was there, one man told reporters, tears streaming down his face. She was building a new life. She was going to have a baby. And they just erased her. The outcry was universal. Every human colony declared support for military action. Even the peaceful settlements, the ones that had always advocated for diplomacy, agreed that this could not stand. There had to be consequences. Other alien species watched humanity's mobilization with growing concern. Some sent messages urging restraint. Others warned Earth not to escalate. A few offered to mediate negotiations with the Korthaks. Webb rejected them all. There's nothing to negotiate, he told the Centauri ambassador. The Korthaks murdered 250,000 civilians. They will answer for that. In the Korthaks' dominion, leadership was divided. Some wanted to prepare for war. Others insisted humanity would never actually attack. They were a young species, barely 2 centuries in space. They would bluster and threaten, but ultimately back down. The Korthaks' defense fleet assembled near their homeworld. 200 ships, each a powerful warship by their standards. Their commanders were confident. If humanity was foolish enough to attack, they would be destroyed. The Korthaks had fought wars for centuries. They knew how to defend their territory. They expected maybe 20 human ships, perhaps 50 if humanity was truly committed. That's what other species sent when they wanted to make a show of force. Manageable numbers. A battle their fleet could win. They didn't understand humans yet. 4 weeks after New Haven went silent, Admiral Webb stood on the bridge of the flagship Remembrance. Around him, spread across a massive formation, were 999 other warships, carriers carrying thousands of strike craft, destroyers bristling with railguns, frigates loaded with missiles, support vessels carrying enough ammunition to level a continent, 1,000 warplanes just as he had promised. All ships report ready, sir, Rivera said. Webb nodded. He thought of New Haven. He thought of the 250,000 people who had been alive a month ago, going about their lives, building their future. He thought of the message the Korthaks had tried to send. Set course for the Korthaks home system, he ordered. It's time to send our answer. The fleet engaged their jump drives. Space twisted. And 1,000 human warships vanished from Sol, carrying humanity's response to those who would harm its people. The galaxy was about to learn what it meant to provoke Earth. The shipyards above Mars glowed like small suns working day and night without stopping. Welding sparks flashed in the darkness of space as crews assembled weapons that would make other species tremble. Inside the command center, Admiral Marcus Webb watched the construction with grim satisfaction. Humanity had been building these ships for years, preparing for threats that might come. Now those threats had arrived. Production is ahead of schedule, reported Commander Hayes from the manufacturing division. We'll have all 1,000 ships ready in 3 weeks. Webb nodded. 3 weeks felt like an eternity when he thought about New Haven. Every hour that passed, the Korthaks leaders probably felt safer, more confident that humanity would negotiate. They were wrong. Humans didn't negotiate with those who murdered civilians. President Martinez visited the fleet assembly point 5 days after the emergency session. She floated through the observation deck of Station Armstrong, looking at the growing armada. Ships of all sizes filled her view, from massive carriers that could house 5,000 crew members to small, fast destroyers designed for precision strikes. Is this really necessary? She asked Webb quietly. They were alone in the observation room, Earth hanging blue and beautiful in the background. 1,000 ships seems like we're trying to destroy them completely. Webb understood her concern. He had spent sleepless nights wrestling with the same question. Madam President, the Korthax have 200 warships. By galactic standards, that's a major military power. If we send 50 ships, we might win, but we'll take heavy losses. If we send 100, they might see it as a fair fight and refuse to surrender. But if we send 1,000... He paused, choosing his words carefully. If we send 1,000 ships, they'll know immediately that resistance is suicide. We'll save lives on both sides. And you think this will prevent future attacks? Martinez asked. I know it will, Webb replied. Right now, the galaxy sees humanity as young, inexperienced, weak. Species like the Korthax think they can push us around. After this, they'll know better. They'll know that if you harm human civilians, you don't face sanctions or negotiations. You face overwhelming force. Martinez looked at the ships again. The doctrine of remembrance, yes, ma'am. We remember our dead, and we make sure those responsible never forget what they've done. The doctrine of remembrance had been written by Webb's predecessor, Admiral Chen, after the colony ship disaster. It was simple. Any attack on human civilians would be met with total military response. Not proportional response. Not measured response. Total response. The goal wasn't just justice. It was deterrence. Make the consequences so severe that no one would dare try it again. The doctrine had only been invoked once before, against the pirates who destroyed that colony ship. Earth's forces had hunted down every pirate base, every hidden station, every ship associated with the attack. It took 6 months, but when it was over, piracy in human space had dropped to almost nothing. The message was received. You could rob cargo ships, but if you killed civilians, humanity would erase you. Now the Korthax would learn the same lesson. Intelligence reports flooded in daily. Agent Park, who ran the signals division, brought Webb the latest analysis. Sir, we've confirmed the Korthax leadership ordered the attack personally. Their high command met 3 weeks before New Haven was destroyed. They voted to make an example of a human colony. Why? Webb asked, though he already suspected the answer. Territory. New Haven was building a new station that would have extended into space they consider theirs. They wanted to establish dominance early, before humanity grew too strong. They thought one demonstration would make us retreat. Webb felt anger burn in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. What's their current defensive posture? Their fleet is gathering near their homeworld Korthax Prime. 200 ships like we estimated. They're confident. Communications we've intercepted suggest they expect maybe 20 or 30 human ships, and only if we're really angry. 20 or 30, Webb repeated, shaking his head. They really don't understand us yet. No, sir. They're used to galactic norms. Most species avoid war. When conflicts happen, they're small, limited affairs. A few ships on each side, maybe a short battle, then negotiations. They think we'll follow the same pattern. We're not like other species, Webb said quietly. When someone threatens our families, we don't negotiate. We act. The human fleet grew day by day. Carriers like the Remembrance, the Vengeance, and the New Haven were completed and crewed. Destroyers named after cities and heroes rolled out of the construction docks. Frigates, support ships, and supply vessels joined the formation. Every ship carried the best weapons humanity could build. Railguns that could punch through armor at incredible distances, missiles with nuclear warheads, laser batteries, and the experimental mass drivers that could accelerate projectiles to a fraction of light speed. Captain Rivera oversaw the training exercises. The key is coordination, she told her strike group commanders. The Korthax are experienced warriors. They've fought territorial wars for centuries. But they fight like most galactic species do. Ship-to-ship combat. Individual captains making decisions. We're going to show them something different. The human doctrine was based on swarm tactics. Ships would move in coordinated groups, sharing targeting data through quantum communication links. When one ship fired, 10 others would fire in support. When one ship took damage, others would cover its retreat. The entire fleet would operate as a single organism, responding to threats with overwhelming, synchronized firepower. We don't give them a fair fight, Rivera explained. We give them no fight at all. We give them the choice between surrender and destruction. 50,000 Marines trained for possible ground operations. They practiced boarding actions, facility seizures, and urban combat. Their commanders hoped they wouldn't be needed, but they prepared anyway. If the Korthax fought to the last ship, humanity needed to be ready to take the war to the surface. Other alien species watched the preparations with growing alarm. The Centauri Federation, which had peaceful relations with Earth, sent an urgent diplomatic mission. Ambassador Varrock, a tall reptilian being with silver scales, met with President Martinez. "This level of force is unprecedented," Varrock said, his translator rendering his hisses into human speech. "The galaxy is watching. If you destroy the Korthax, other species will fear you. They'll see humans as aggressors." Martinez met his eyes steadily. "The Korthax murdered 250,000 of our civilians. What would your people do if someone glassed one of your colonies?" Varrock was silent for a moment. "We would seek justice through the Galactic Council. We would demand reparations, sanctions, and if the attackers ignored the Council, if they faced no real consequences?" Varrock had no answer. "We're not seeking to conquer the Korthax," Martinez continued. "We're not trying to take their territory. But they need to understand, and the galaxy needs to understand, that human lives are not expendable, that you cannot murder our people and expect a strongly worded statement in response." Varrock bowed his head slightly. "I understand your position. I only hope you understand the position you're putting yourselves in. Power draws fear, and fear breeds conflict. Then let them fear us," Martinez said. "Better they fear us than think we're easy targets." After Varrock left, Martinez sat alone in her office. She looked at the photos of New Haven that covered one wall. Smiling faces, children playing, families building new lives. All gone now, turned to ash and glass by weapons fired from orbit. She thought about Varrock's warning, about how the galaxy would perceive humanity after this. Part of her worried he was right. But another part, the part that thought about those 250,000 dead, knew this was necessary. Humanity had to draw a line, had to show that there were consequences for attacking human worlds. Webb received his final briefing from intelligence 2 days before the fleet was scheduled to depart. "The Korthax leadership is divided," Park reported. "Some want to prepare for war. Others insist humanity will negotiate. They're arguing about whether to fortify their positions or send diplomats." "Let them argue," Webb said. "By the time they figure out we're serious, it'll be too late. Sir, there's one more thing. The Korthax High Command is broadcasting their confidence to their people. They're saying that if humanity attacks, their fleet will destroy the invaders easily. They're treating this like it'll be a simple defensive action." Webb felt a cold satisfaction. Good. Let them be confident. Let them be unprepared for what was coming. It would make the shock even greater when 1,000 human warships emerged from jump space. The night before departure, Webb walked through the Remembrance. He visited every deck, spoke to crew members, checked systems personally. He wanted them to understand what they were doing and why it mattered. "We're not going there to conquer," he told a group of young weapons officers. "We're going there to deliver a message. The message is simple. You cannot harm human civilians without facing consequences. You cannot murder our people and expect to sleep safely. We protect our own and we avenge our dead." "Are we going to destroy their whole world, sir?" one young officer asked nervously. Webb shook his head. "That's not who we are. We're going to destroy their ability to threaten us. We're going to make sure they never attack another human colony. But we're not murderers. We're not like them." The officer looked relieved. On departure day, the fleet assembled in perfect formation. 1,000 warships representing the combined military might of humanity. Crews were ready. Weapons were loaded. Jump drives were charged. Webb stood on the bridge of the Remembrance, looking at the tactical display that showed every ship in the fleet. 1,000 green dots, each representing hundreds or thousands of human lives, all committed to one purpose: justice for New Haven. "All ships report ready," Rivera announced. Webb took a deep breath. This was it. The moment that would define how the galaxy saw humanity for generations to come. The moment that would answer the Korthax's violence with humanity's strength. "Send to all ships," Webb ordered. "Today we honor the dead of New Haven. Today we show the galaxy that humanity protects its people. Today we deliver Earth's answer to those who would destroy our homes. Today we remember." Across the fleet, crews stood at attention. Some prayed. Some thought of loved ones. All understood the weight of what they were about to do. "Engage jump drives," Webb commanded. Space twisted, reality bent, and 1,000 human warships vanished from Sol system, carrying Earth's judgment to those who had brought war to humanity's door. The Korthax were about to learn a lesson they would never forget. Space tore open at the edge of the Korthax home system, not with a single flash, but with 1,000 simultaneous ruptures in reality, as human ships emerged from jump space. The Remembrance led the formation, followed by carriers, destroyers, frigates, and support vessels spreading out in a formation that stretched across millions of kilometers. Admiral Marcus Webb watched his tactical display light up with green markers. Every ship reporting in, every crew ready, the greatest military force humanity had ever assembled, all focused on one purpose. All vessels accounted for, reported Captain Rivera. Jump was successful. We're at the rally point, 6 light hours from Korthax Prime. Webb nodded. 6 light hours meant it would take time for the Korthax to see them coming, but their sensors would detect the energy signatures soon enough, begin the advance, battle formation, and open a channel to Galactic Broadcasting Network. Rivera looked surprised. Sir, you want this broadcast? I want everyone to see this, Webb said firmly. Every species in the galaxy needs to understand what happens when you attack humanity. On Korthax Prime, Defense Commander Thackrell received the first sensor reports with disbelief. How many ships? Initial count shows. This must be an error, his sensor officer said, mandibles clicking nervously. Readings suggest over 900 contacts, possibly more. 900? That's impossible. Recalibrate the sensors. Sir, I've recalibrated 3 times. The readings are accurate. Multiple jump signatures, massive energy output. It's a fleet, sir. A very large fleet. Thackrell felt his blood chill. 900 ships? Humanity barely had space travel. They were young, inexperienced. How could they possibly field such a force? Sound the alert. Get our fleet into defensive positions, and contact High Command immediately. Within the hour, the Korthax defense fleet of 200 warships moved to intercept. These were veteran vessels, battle-tested in territorial disputes and wars that stretched back centuries. Their crews were confident. 200 ships could hold against any reasonable attack, but what was approaching wasn't reasonable by galactic standards. The human fleet advanced steadily, maintaining perfect formation. Destroyers screened the larger vessels. Carriers positioned themselves to launch strike craft. Frigates formed hunter-killer groups. Every ship moved in coordination, linked by quantum communication that updated their targeting solutions thousands of times per second. They're positioning to meet us, Rivera observed, watching the Korthax fleet arrange itself into a defensive wall between the humans and their homeworld. Traditional defensive formation. They're preparing for ship-to-ship combat. They still don't understand, Webb said quietly. They think this will be like their other wars. A battle between fleets. They'll learn differently. The Galactic Broadcasting Network picked up the human fleet's approach within 2 hours. News feeds across dozens of species showed the same image. 1,000 human warships advancing in perfect synchronization. Other alien observers scrambled to get sensors into the system to witness what was happening. The Centauri Federation sent an emergency transmission. Earth Fleet, this is Ambassador Varrock. We urge you to halt your advance and allow diplomatic channels to... Negative, Webb cut him off. The time for diplomacy ended when the Korthax glassed New Haven. They wanted to send a message. Now we're delivering our response. You're risking a galactic war, Varrock protested. The Korthax started this war when they murdered 250,000 civilians, Webb replied. We're ending it. As the fleets closed to combat range, Webb opened a broad-spectrum channel that would reach every ship in the system, every sensor platform watching, every species paying attention to this confrontation. Attention, Korthax Dominion, he said, his voice carrying across space. I am Fleet Admiral Marcus Webb of the United Earth Forces. You erased New Haven Colony. You murdered 250,000 human civilians. You did this to demonstrate your power, to establish dominance, to make us fear you. We are the answer to your demonstration. On Korthax Prime, High Command watched the advancing fleet with growing horror. The initial count had been wrong. There weren't 900 ships. There were more. 1,000 human warships, each bristling with weapons, advancing with mechanical precision. They've gone insane, muttered High Counselor Vren. This is beyond any proportional. Response. Open communications, commanded Supreme Leader Krath. Offer to negotiate. Offer reparations. Whatever they want. But Webb wasn't interested in negotiations. You wanted to show us that you controlled this region of space. He continued his broadcast. You wanted us to know our place. You expected us to retreat, to beg, to negotiate. You expected us to be like the other species you've bullied over the centuries. You were wrong. The human fleet reached combat range. The Korthax defense fleet opened fire first. Long-range missiles and energy weapons lancing out toward the human vessels. It was an impressive display of firepower by galactic standards. It wasn't enough. Human point defense systems lit up space with interceptor fire. Missiles were destroyed before reaching their targets. Energy weapons splashed against shields that had been designed to withstand much worse. The Korthax volley barely scratched the human formation. "Return fire," Webb ordered. "Show them what real firepower looks like." The human response was devastating. 1,000 warships opened fire simultaneously, their weapons linked by targeting computers that identified optimal firing solutions in microseconds. Railguns accelerated projectiles to incredible velocities. Missiles swarmed toward Korthax vessels in coordinated waves. Laser batteries targeted propulsion systems and weapon mounts with surgical precision. The Korthax defensive line shattered in the first exchange. Thackrell watched in horror as a quarter of his fleet simply ceased to exist. Ships that had fought in dozens of battles were torn apart by kinetic impacts that transferred so much energy their hulls vaporized. Others were crippled by missiles that overwhelmed their defenses through sheer numbers. His flagship shook as a railgun round passed close enough to create a shockwave even in the vacuum of space. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," he ordered. "Reform the line." But there was no reforming. The human ships moved like a single organism, adjusting their formation to maintain optimal firing positions. When Korthax vessels tried to flank, human destroyers broke off to intercept. When they tried to concentrate fire on a single human ship, others moved to shield it while still maintaining their own attack. "They're fighting like nothing we've ever seen," his tactical officer reported, voice shaking. "They're sharing targeting data in real time. When one ship acquires a target, dozens open fire simultaneously. Our ships can't withstand that kind of concentrated firepower." "Keep fighting," Thackrell ordered, but he could hear the desperation in his own voice. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted 6 hours. The Korthax defense fleet fought bravely, their crews showing the courage of warriors who had defended their territory for generations. But courage wasn't enough against humanity's overwhelming numerical and technological superiority. Human strike craft launched from the carriers, swarming around larger Korthax vessels like insects. They targeted weapon systems, engines, communication arrays. The few Korthax ships that tried to break through the human line found themselves facing concentrated fire from dozens of vessels. No single ship stood a chance. Commander Thackrell's flagship was one of the last to fall. Surrounded by human destroyers, systems failing, crew dying, he sent one final message to his homeworld. "Tell High Command. Tell them we fought well. Tell them the humans are not like other species. They don't fight for territory. They fight for vengeance. And they're very, very good at it." The flagship's power core failed, and it went dark and silent. By the time the battle ended, the Korthax defense fleet had been destroyed. Not defeated, not damaged, destroyed. 200 warships reduced to debris and lifeless hulls floating in space. The human fleet, by contrast, had suffered minimal damage. A few ships reported hull breaches or damaged systems, but not a single vessel had been lost. Admiral Webb surveyed the wreckage on his tactical display. It gave him no pleasure to see it. These had been living beings, sailors like his own crew, following orders from their leaders. But they had served the government that murdered New Haven, and this was the price of that crime. "Secure the orbital space," he ordered. "Begin deploying sensor platforms and defensive satellites, and open a channel to Korthax Prime." The planet's population of 2 billion watched from below, as 1,000 human warships established orbital supremacy over their homeworld. Their defense fleet was gone. Their orbital weapons platforms had been destroyed. They were completely helpless before Earth's military might. Webb's face appeared on every screen on Korthax Prime. In government buildings, in homes, in public spaces, billions of Korthax saw the human admiral who had brought destruction to their fleet. "People of the Korthax Dominion," he said, his voice calm but carrying unmistakable authority. "Your leaders murdered 250,000 human civilians. They did this to demonstrate their power. Now we demonstrate ours. You are surrounded by 1,000 warplanes. Your fleet is destroyed. Your world is defenseless. You are at our mercy." Panic spread through Korthax Prime. Would the humans glass their world as the Korthax had glassed New Haven? Would billions die for the crimes of their leaders? We came here not to conquer you, Webb continued. Not to occupy your world, not to make you our subjects. We came to ensure that you understand the consequences of your actions. You attacked our civilians. You will answer for that crime. But we are not like you. We do not murder the innocent. On Korthax Prime, High Command frantically attempted to contact the human fleet, to negotiate, to surrender, to do anything that might save their world. But Webb wasn't finished speaking. Your military is broken. Your leadership will face justice. Your ability to threaten any other species is ended. This is what happens when you harm humanity. This is what happens when you think we are weak. This is what happens when you forget that behind every human colony, every human station, every human ship stands all of Earth, ready to answer any threat with overwhelming force. Webb looked directly into the camera and threw it at every species in the galaxy that was watching this broadcast. We don't want war. We don't seek conflict. But if you bring war to us, if you harm our people, if you think that humanity is an easy target, we will come. We will find you. We will surround your world with our ships, and we will show you that humans protect their own no matter the cost. He paused, letting the words sink in across the galaxy. The Korthax learned this lesson today. We hope no one else needs to learn it tomorrow. The transmission ended. The human fleet remained in orbit, 1,000 ships standing guard over a defeated enemy, a warning to the galaxy, and a promise to every human colony that Earth would always answer when they called for help. The war was over. The real work was about to begin. The 1,000 human warships hung in orbit above Korthax Prime like a metal storm frozen in time. On the planet below, 2 billion beings waited to learn their fate. Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the Remembrance, facing the hardest decision of his career. Sir, we're receiving hundreds of surrender offers from the Korthax government, reported Captain Rivera. They're offering complete capitulation, reparations, territory, anything we want. Webb nodded slowly. And what about the leadership? The ones who ordered the attack on New Haven? They're trying to negotiate immunity for themselves, offering to step down if we guarantee their safety. Immunity, Webb repeated, his voice cold. They murder 250,000 people and they want immunity. The bridge was silent. Every officer present knew what was at stake. The entire galaxy was watching this moment. Whatever humanity did next would define how other species saw them for generations. Sir, we're also receiving communications from other species, said Lieutenant Park at the communication station. The Centauri Federation is requesting we show mercy. The Voxan Empire is warning us against occupation. Even some human colonies are asking us to be careful. Webb pulled up the tactical display, showing the defensive positions of the human fleet. Every ship was in perfect position to bombard Korthax Prime if ordered. They could glass the planet just as the Korthax had glassed New Haven. Billions would die. It would be justice of a sort, but it would also make humanity into monsters. Get me President Martinez on secure channel, Webb ordered. Minutes later, the president's face appeared on his screen. She looked tired, the weight of command showing in the lines around her eyes. Behind her, Webb could see the emergency command center on Earth filled with advisors and military officials. Admiral, she said, the world is watching. What's your assessment? Madame President, we have complete military supremacy. The Korthax cannot resist us. They're offering full surrender. But there's a question we need to answer. What justice looks like. Martinez leaned forward. Explain. We can destroy them. Glass their world like they glassed New Haven. It would send a clear message that attacking humanity brings total destruction, but it would also make us murderers of billions. We'd be no better than they are. Webb paused, organizing his thoughts. Or we can show restraint. Punish those responsible. Disarm their military but spare the civilians. It's a more complex message, but maybe a more important one. What do you recommend? Webb looked at the planet below. 2 billion lives. Families, children. People who had no say in their government's decision to attack New Haven. People who were just trying to live their lives. Same as the colonists who had died. I recommend we show them that humanity is better than they expected. That we're strong enough to destroy them but wise enough not to. That we punish crimes without becoming criminals ourselves. Martinez was quiet for a long moment. Webb could see her weighing the options, considering the political consequences, thinking about the message this would send. Do it, she finally said. Show the galaxy that humans can be both strong and just. But make sure the Korthax leadership pays for what they did. Understood, Madame President. Webb ended the call and turned to his crew. Captain Rivera, prepare a boarding operation. I want teams to secure the Korthax High Command building and arrest everyone responsible for ordering the attack on New Haven. Lieutenant Park, prepare a message for broadcast. Sir, the Korthax have started deploying ground forces around their government center, Rivera reported. Looks like they're preparing to resist arrest. They can try, Webb said grimly. Launch the Marines. Dropships launched from the fleet's carriers streaking through the atmosphere toward Korthax Prime's capital city. 50,000 Marines, the best trained soldiers humanity had, armed with weapons designed to overwhelm any resistance. As they descended, Webb opened a channel to broadcast across the entire planet. People of Korthax Prime, his voice echoed through every communication device on the planet. We are not here to destroy you. We are not here to conquer your world. We are here to deliver justice for the murder of New Haven Colony. Your military is already defeated. Do not make this harder than it needs to be. In the capital, Supreme Leader Krath watched the human dropships approach. His security forces had fortified the High Command building, preparing for a siege. Anti-aircraft weapons were ready. Thousands of soldiers stood prepared to defend their leaders. They're bluffing, Krath insisted to his council. They won't actually assault a government building. The galactic community won't allow it. High Counselor Vren wasn't so sure. They destroyed our entire fleet in 6 hours. They have us surrounded. Maybe we should— Never! Krath slammed his fist on the table. We are the Korthax Dominion. We do not surrender to these primitives. The first human dropships landed 3 kilometers from the High Command building. Marines poured out in organized formations, their armor reflecting the alien sun. Korthax soldiers opened fire and the battle began. It lasted 20 minutes. Human Marines advanced with precision and overwhelming firepower. Their armor absorbed shots that would have killed unprotected soldiers. Their weapons fired rounds that punched through Korthax defensive positions. When the Korthax tried to hold a barricade, Marines flanked them. When they tried to concentrate forces, orbital support from the fleet struck with pinpoint accuracy. The Korthax soldiers fought bravely, but they were outmatched. Humanity had been preparing for ground combat since the early days of space exploration. Every Marine was trained in multiple combat environments, equipped with the best gear, and supported by the most advanced military technology humanity could produce. Major Sarah Chen led the assault on the High Command building itself. Her team breached the main entrance with shaped charges, moving through the corridors with tactical precision. Korthax security forces tried to stop them, but human weapons and training were simply superior. Government chamber secured, Chen reported over the command channel. We have eyes on the Korthax leadership. Webb watched the video feed from Chen's helmet camera. It showed Supreme Leader Krath and his council, backed into a corner surrounded by human Marines. The Korthax leaders who had ordered the destruction of New Haven looked small and frightened now. Supreme Leader Krath. Webb's voice came through Chen's speaker. You are under arrest for crimes against humanity, specifically for ordering the deliberate murder of 250,000 civilians on New Haven Colony. You have no authority here, Krath shouted, his translator rendering his alien speech into English. This is Korthax sovereign territory. You lost your sovereignty when you committed war crimes, Webb replied coldly. Take them into custody, Major. Chen's Marines moved forward. The Korthax leaders tried to resist, but it was pointless. Within minutes, they were secured and being marched toward the dropships. As the arrests happened, Webb opened another broadcast to the planet. People of Korthax Prime, your leaders are in custody. They will face trial for their crimes. But you have our word. We will not harm civilian populations. We will not glass your cities. We will not become the monsters your leaders were. On the planet below, citizens emerged cautiously from their homes. They had expected death from above, bombardment, destruction. Instead, human Marines were securing military facilities and government buildings, but leaving civilians alone. Phase 2, Webb ordered. Begin dismantling their military infrastructure. Human forces moved with surgical precision across Korthax Prime. Weapons factories were occupied. Military bases were secured. Warship construction facilities were shut down. Weapons stockpiles were placed under guard. Every piece of military infrastructure that could threaten another species was systematically neutralized, but schools remained open. Hospitals continued operating. Civilian infrastructure was untouched. The message was clear. Humanity was targeting the military and government, not the people. Other alien species watched in fascination. The Centauri Federation had expected brutal occupation. The Voxan Empire had predicted wholesale destruction. Neither happened. Instead, humanity demonstrated something the galaxy rarely saw: power combined with restraint. "This is unprecedented," Ambassador Varrock told his government. "They have the power to destroy the Korthax completely, but they're choosing not to. They're showing that humans can be trusted with military might because they don't abuse it." Not everyone agreed. Some species saw human restraint as weakness. Others worried about the precedent of one species invading another's homeworld. But no one could deny the effectiveness of humanity's response. A week after the arrests, Webb convened a trial, not on Korthax Prime, but broadcast across the galaxy. The Korthax leadership faced judges from multiple species, including humans, ensuring fairness. Evidence was presented: communication logs showing the deliberate targeting of New Haven, orders to destroy the colony, discussions of how to terrorize humanity into submission. Supreme Leader Krath tried to justify his actions. "It was a strategic necessity. New Haven threatened our territorial integrity." "New Haven was a civilian colony," the lead judge replied. "There were no military installations, no weapons platforms. You murdered civilians to send a message." "It's how we've always handled territorial disputes," Krath argued. "Then you've always been committing war crimes," the judge responded. "This court finds you guilty." The sentence was announced across the galaxy. Krath and the other leaders responsible for New Haven's destruction would spend the rest of their lives in detention. The Korthax military would be limited to defensive forces only, monitored by a joint galactic peacekeeping operation. The Korthax Dominion would pay reparations to the families of New Haven's victims, but their civilization would continue. Their people would not be punished for their leaders' crimes. Their world would not be destroyed. Webb stood on the bridge of the remembrance as the sentence was carried out. He felt no satisfaction, no triumph. Justice had been delivered, but it couldn't bring back the dead. It couldn't restore New Haven. It could only ensure that such a tragedy never happened again. "Sir, we're receiving reports from across the galaxy," Rivera said. "Multiple species are reconsidering their defense postures. Some are reaching out to establish formal relations with Earth. Others are. Well, they're scared of us." "Let them be scared," Webb replied. "Fear is better than contempt. They thought we were weak, and that belief killed 250,000 people. Now they know better." "What about us, sir? What happens to the fleet?" Webb looked at the tactical display showing all 1,000 ships still in orbit. "We stay here for 6 months. We make sure the disarmament proceeds. We show the Korthax and everyone watching that when humanity makes promises, we keep them. Both the promise to protect our people and the promise not to become tyrants. And then we go home. We remember our dead, and we hope this never has to happen again." On Earth, President Martinez addressed the world. "Today, justice was delivered for New Haven. We showed the galaxy that humanity will defend its people with overwhelming force, but we also showed that we won't become the evil we fight against. We are strong enough to destroy our enemies and wise enough to show mercy. That is who we are. That is who we will always be." The 1,000 warplanes remained on station, a reminder and a warning. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity was not to be trifled with, not because they were cruel, but because they were effective. Not because they sought war, but because they would end any war brought to them. The Korthax had wanted to establish dominance. Instead, they had established humanity's place in the galactic order, as protectors of their own, as deliverers of justice, and as a species that would never again be seen as an easy target. The message had been sent, the message had been received, and peace, fragile but real, began to take root in the stars. 3 months after the fleet arrived at Korthax Prime, Sarah Chen returned to where New Haven once stood. The colony had been her first assignment out of the academy, monitoring communications for the outer territories. Now it was a memorial site, protected by international treaty and guarded by automated defense platforms. She stood in a small shuttle, looking at the glassed surface below. The buildings were gone. The gardens where children had played were gone. The landing fields where ships had brought supplies and new colonists were gone. Everything had been melted into smooth, dark glass that reflected the light of the system's star. "We're approaching the memorial coordinates," the pilot said quietly. Sarah nodded, not trusting herself to speak. 250,000 names were carved into a single monument of black stone that had been placed at the center of where the colony used to be. It was the only structure that remained, a reminder of lives lost and promises kept. She descended to the surface in a protective suit, walking across the glassed ground. Each step felt heavy, like the weight of all those deaths pressed down on her. She reached the monument and placed her hand on the cold stone. "We answered," she whispered. "You're not forgotten." Above her, a single human destroyer maintained orbital position. New Haven would never be rebuilt, but it would never be unguarded again. This was sacred ground now, protected forever. On Earth, Admiral Marcus Webb retired from active service. The ceremony was held at Arlington National Cemetery with full military honors. President Martinez presented him with the Medal of Valor, humanity's highest military decoration. Admiral Webb led the greatest military operation in human history, Martinez said to the assembled crowd. He showed the galaxy that humanity will protect its own with overwhelming force, but also with wisdom and restraint. He delivered justice for New Haven while maintaining our moral principles. He is a hero to all of humanity. Webb stood at the podium, the weight of the medal heavy around his neck. He looked out at the crowd, at the families of New Haven's victims who had traveled to attend, at the military officers who had served under his command, at the civilian leaders who had trusted him with Earth's response. "I'm not a hero," he said simply. "Heroes are the people who died at New Haven, going about their lives building a new world. I just made sure their deaths meant something. I made sure no one will ever again think that human lives are expendable." The crowd erupted in applause, but Webb felt only exhaustion. He had done what needed to be done, but the cost haunted him. The Korthax sailors who had died following their leader's orders, the Marines who had been wounded in the assault. The forever changed relationship between humanity and the galaxy. Late that night, Webb sat alone in his apartment, looking at a photo of his niece. She had been on New Haven working as a teacher, 26 years old, full of dreams about educating the next generation of colonists. The Korthax had turned her into vapor and ash. "Did I do right?" he asked her image. "Did I honor your memory, or did I just become what they were?" The photo had no answers. It never did. On Korthax Prime, life slowly returned to normal under human oversight. The occupation wasn't harsh. Human forces secured military installations but left civilian areas alone. Trade continued. Schools reopened. The Korthax people learned to live under the watchful eyes of the 1,000 ships in orbit. Former Supreme Leader Krath sat in a detention facility, watching broadcasts from across the galaxy. He saw species that had once been allies distancing themselves from the Korthax. He saw trade agreements canceled. He saw the Dominion's territory being divided under joint galactic supervision. "We thought we were strong," he muttered to himself. "We thought we understood power." A human guard stood nearby, expression neutral. "You understood conquest," the guard said. "You didn't understand consequence." Krath looked at him bitterly. "Your people destroyed our fleet. You humiliated our entire civilization. Your people murdered 250,000 civilians," the guard replied. "What did you expect? A diplomatic note?" Krath had no answer. In his arrogance, he had expected humanity to be like other species, to negotiate, to compromise. He had been catastrophically wrong. Across the galaxy, the political landscape shifted. Species that had viewed humanity as newcomers, as primitives barely worthy of attention, suddenly reassessed their positions. The Centauri Federation proposed a formal alliance with Earth. The Vaxan Empire, which had been considering expanding into human space, quietly shelved those plans. Dozens of smaller species reached out seeking trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. "They're terrified of us," President Martinez said during a cabinet meeting. Half the galaxy thinks we're going to start conquering systems. Are we? Asked the defense minister. No, Martinez said firmly. We proved our point. We showed we can't be pushed around. But we're not conquerors. We're builders. We just want to live in peace and explore the stars. Then we need to show them that, suggested the foreign minister. The same way we showed the Korthax our strength, we need to show everyone else our intentions. Martinez nodded. Open negotiations with every species that's reached out. Offer trade agreements, cultural exchanges, technology sharing. Show them that the 1,000 ships came out for New Haven, but they'll go back into dock once justice is served. The word spread through diplomatic channels. Earth was not seeking dominance. The massive fleet had been assembled for one purpose, to answer the attack on New Haven. Once that purpose was fulfilled, humanity would return to peaceful expansion and cooperation. Some species remained skeptical. Others were relieved. All of them respected humanity in a way they hadn't before. 6 months after the fleet arrived at Korthax Prime, Admiral Webb's successor gave the order to withdraw. The occupation was over. Galactic peacekeepers would maintain oversight of Korthax military restrictions, but the human fleet was no longer needed. One by one, the 1,000 ships departed. Carriers, destroyers, frigates all jumping back toward human space. The operation that had shown the galaxy humanity's military might was ending. Captain Rivera commanded the Remembrance now, as Webb had retired. She stood on the bridge watching the last human ships prepare to leave orbit. It feels strange, she said to her executive officer. We came here for war, but we're leaving with peace. Do you think it will last? The officer asked. Rivera thought about it. I think everyone learned a lesson here. The Korthax learned that attacking humanity has consequences. Other species learned that we'll defend ourselves with overwhelming force. And we learned that having power doesn't mean we have to abuse it. What about the families of New Haven? Did they get justice? As much as justice is possible when your loved ones are dead, Rivera said sadly. The people responsible are in prison. The Korthax can never threaten anyone again. And every species in the galaxy knows that human colonies are protected. That's something. The Remembrance was the last ship to leave. As it prepared to jump, Rivera opened a final transmission to Korthax Prime. People of the Korthax Dominion, she said. The human fleet is departing. We came because your leaders murdered our people. We're leaving because justice has been served. Learn from this. Grow from this. And never forget that peace is always preferable to war, but only if all sides respect it. The ship jumped, and the skies above Korthax Prime were clear for the first time in 6 months. On Earth, a new memorial was constructed in Geneva, home of the United Earth Government. It was a simple design, a wall of names, 250,000 of them, each one a person who had lived and died at New Haven. Above the names, carved in stone, was a single phrase. They erased us. We answered. We did not become them. Sarah Chen attended the dedication ceremony. She stood among thousands of others who had lost loved ones, listening to President Martinez speak. We will never forget New Haven, Martinez said. We will never forget the price of peace. And we will never forget that our strength comes not from our weapons but from our principles. We protect our own. We deliver justice, but we do not become the monsters we fight. Later, Sarah walked along the wall of names until she found the ones she was looking for. Her parents had been at New Haven, retired and enjoying the frontier life they'd always dreamed of. She traced their names with her fingers. The galaxy knows now, she told them. They know that humanity remembers, that we protect each other, that we don't forgive those who harm us, but we don't let revenge turn us into something we're not. A young boy approached, maybe 10 years old, holding his mother's hand. He looked up at Sarah's uniform. Were you there? He asked. When the fleet answered. I was there when New Haven fell, Sarah said. I was the one who discovered it was gone. My aunt was there, the boy said quietly. Mom says the fleet made sure it never happens again. Sarah knelt down to his level. That's right. 1,000 warplanes surrounded the people who did it. They faced justice. And now every colony, every station, every human in space knows that Earth will always answer when they need help. Good, the boy said with the simple certainty of a child. No one should hurt people and get away with it. No, Sarah agreed. They shouldn't. As the sun set over Earth, casting long shadows across the memorial, The scattered human colonies across a dozen star systems went about their lives with new confidence. They knew they weren't alone. They knew that if anyone threatened them, if anyone tried to harm them, Earth would answer, not with diplomacy, not with negotiations, not with compromise, with 1,000 warplanes. The Korthax had learned that lesson. They had tried to establish dominance through fear and violence. Instead, they had established humanity's position in the galactic order as a species that could not be bullied, could not be terrorized, could not be made to abandon its own. Other species watched and learned, some with fear, some with respect, all with understanding. Humanity was young, yes. Inexperienced in galactic politics, yes. But deadly serious about protecting its people, absolutely. Admiral Webb, sitting in his quiet apartment, received a message from the Galactic Council. They were establishing new protocols, new laws about the treatment of civilian populations in conflicts. The New Haven Accords, they were calling them. Rules designed to prevent another massacre like the one that had triggered Earth's response. Maybe some good came from it after all, he thought, though it felt like cold comfort. The memorial lights came on as darkness fell, illuminating the names of the dead. 250,000 people who would never see another sunrise, never laugh with friends, never build the future they'd dreamed of. But their deaths had not been in vain. They had changed the galaxy. They had shown every species that humanity valued its people above all else, and they had given their species a new phrase that echoed across the stars, a warning and a promise. Don't make them send 1,000 ships. Humanity had sent them once. The message was received, and in the cold vastness of space where millions of species competed and conflicted, one truth was now universal. Human colonies were protected. Human lives mattered, and anyone who forgot that would face not just Earth's military might, but its unwavering commitment to justice, delivered with overwhelming force and measured restraint. The galaxy had a new power to respect, not because humanity sought dominance, but because it had proven it would protect its own at any cost. The 1,000 warplanes had delivered Earth's answer, and the stars themselves seemed to remember.